Hello all and welcome to the Rails board meeting. This is Friday, February 27th, 2026, and I am Gwen Gregory, President of the Rails board, and I call this meeting to order at 1 p.m. Stacy, will you please call roll?
Monica Caldicott.
Here.
Jean Carroll.
Here.
Jennifer Cutchell. Megan Gove.
Here.
Gwen Gregory.
Here.
Ron Hallahan.
Here.
Jennifer Hovanek.
Here.
Amanda Kowalski.
Here.
Rob Parks.
Here.
Emily Porter. Carolyn Sennett.
Here.
Alex Vancina.
Here.
Karen Wojcik.
Here.
Yolanda Wilburn. Kathy Nanikowski.
Here.
There's quorum.
I'll handle guests and public comments at the same time. Let's start with guests and public comments in Burr Ridge.
Monica Harris, Rails.
Sharon Swanson, Rails.
Barb Miller, Rails.
Laura Nemeth, Rails.
Kate Niehoff, Rails. Layla Heath, Rails.
Dan Foster from Rails.
Stacy Palmisano, Rails.
Joe Philippek, Rails. Colin Newman, Rails.
Are there any guests and public comments in East Peoria?
Nope.
Stacy, will you read the guest names over Zoom?
Ryan Hemmel. Mark Hatch. Mark Schaefer.
Are there any public comments from any Zoom participants?
I'm sorry, this is Mark Schaefer. Did you want me to say present?
No, that's okay.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay.
Stacy, was there any public comments from Zoom?
There's no public comment on Zoom.
Any public comments via email?
Did not receive any public comments by email.
Thank you. We will now move on to the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to move any item to the regular agenda for further discussion? May I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda?
Caldicott, Karen. Second, Caldicott.
All right. Stacy, will you please call roll?
Monica Caldicott.
Yes.
Jean Carroll.
Yes.
Megan Gove.
Yes.
Gwen Gregory.
Yes.
Ron Hallahan.
Yes.
Jennifer Hovanek.
Yes.
Amanda Kowalski.
Yes.
Rob Parks.
Yes.
Carolyn Sennett.
Yes.
Alex Vancina.
Yes.
Karen Wojcik.
Yes.
And Kathy Nanikowski.
Yes.
Thank you. Next up is Sharon with the Rails financial report.
So much, Gwen, and good afternoon, everyone. I was about to say good morning. Sorry. You'll find the financial reports for the month of January in your packet. The January 31st general fund cash and investment balance of $27 million would fund 23 months of budgeted fiscal year 2026 operations. General fund revenues through January were a little over $13.8 million, and these were just over $134,000 above budget. This is primarily due to interest rates continuing to remain higher than the 3.5% that we had budgeted. Rails's general fund expenditures through January were just under $12.2 million, and these were nearly $1.5 million above budget, primarily due to that $1.85 million transfer from the general fund to the capital projects fund that the board authorized in November. This was to replenish the amount available for future capital improvements and purchases. In addition, contractual services expenditures were above budget. This was due to timing differences between the budgeted and the actual program expenditures and reimbursements for Rails' work on the Cook County Digital Navigator Network grant. And the December payment of 2/3 of the total budgeted grants for libraries to join local library system automation programs. These amounts are budgeted in 2 equal amounts during the year since the pattern of awards is uncertain at the time that the budget is finalized. Also during December, Rails paid for the new platform fee for the eRead Illinois program. And these above budget expenditures were partially offset by below budget personnel expenditures. This is just from normal hiring delays for several positions over the course of the fiscal year. As well as blended increases for health, dental, vision, and workers' compensation insurances that did not take effect until January. These below budget personnel amounts were partially offset by greater than budgeted needs for temporary help and greater than anticipated recruiting cost. We also had below budget library materials expenditures, and this was just due to timing differences between budgeted and actual purchases of materials for the eRead Illinois program. We also have below budget travel and continuing education expenditures. This was from conferences with unknown dates when the budget was finalized and just staff scheduling conflicts during the fiscal year that prevented some staff from attending conferences that they had planned. We also have below budget vehicle expenditures. This is due to the normal invoicing delay from our fuel card provider, and as well as fuel prices continuing to during January, the average fuel price dropped to $2.58 per gallon. And this is compared to the $3.14 per gallon that we had budgeted. We also had below budget professional services expenditures, primarily from timing differences between work that requires consulting, including the rail strategic planning process, which is now in the initial planning stage, as well as the work surrounding best practices for AI. The special revenue fund is under budget through January. Rails has received the full amounts of both the L2 grant and the World Language Cataloging Services grants from the Illinois State Library. And those expenditures are on track to be expended or nearly expended in full by the end of the fiscal year. The Cook County Digital Navigator Network grant has been reimbursed for the staff time spent on the work for this grant through November. And the contract with the consulting group for this for a portion of the work on this grant has now been finalized. We have the final copy of that contract, and we can expect to receive an invoice for their work from August of 2025 through March of 2026 in March. So fairly soon, those expenditures will catch up to budget. Rails issued payments for the first round of the mini pilot grants in February, which is very, very exciting. It was a total of $62,000 worth of awards. The pattern of subgrants was unknown at the time that the budget was finalized. So there is a timing difference between those subgrants in the budget versus what's actually going to happen. During January, Rails paid for the installation of the new baseboard heaters for the outer offices at Burr Ridge, and you'll see that expenditure in the capital projects fund. And I did also want to note that Rails has received the federal portion of our APC grant early in February, which is great news. And I did the two payments that we received, the amount of the first and largest payment that comes from the state's general fund was $15,510.21 less than the amount received during the prior year. And the amount of the second payment from IMLS funding was $100,184.52 less than the amount that we received during the prior year. We've been in contact with Greg at the Illinois State Library, and he has told us that this will be addressed and the payment for the remaining portion of our award will be processed. And that was pretty much all that I had for you all. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Sharon. Moving on to the reports. I do not have a president's report at this time. Are there any additions or questions to the committee reports included in the packet? Okay, moving on to Monica and the Rails report.
Thank you, Gwen. Well, before we get into the meat of the report that you received, I did have a couple of additional updates here with you. One is I just wanted to give you an update on the American Library Association's National Library Legislative Day, which that process happened in Washington, D.C. this week. I was fortunate to be able to attend along with another Rails board member, Emily Porter. Emily's actually still in Washington, D.C. today, which is why she's not joining us for our meeting today. Stephanie Nissen, who also serves on the Rails Advocacy Committee, was also in attendance. We had a delegation of 6 from Illinois for this process. And it was really an incredible event. I have to say, it was so well organized. There were so many opportunities to hear from ALA about all of the pieces that were very important to them. And they scheduled all of the meetings that we had with our legislators, which really made those meetings possible. So I was actually able to have 6 meetings with our federal legislators to talk about the importance of IMLS funding, IAL funding, which is the Innovative Approaches to Literacy funding for school libraries. The ask there was to raise that from 30 million to 50 million so that there's another opportunity for school libraries to receive federal funding, and then to protect and strengthen the E-rate program, which I do want to thank Ann Slaughter for giving me a lot of additional material that we could use with the Illinois delegation to really speak about broadband and the importance of E-rate across Illinois. So as part of that process, I met with representatives or their staff of Representative Caston, Representative LaHood, Representative Garcia, and Representative Quigley, as well as Senators Duckworth and Durbin as part of that process to really speak about these things. I really want to highly recommend for anybody considering this process for future years that you really think about attending. I think I left not only with a better understanding of the priorities of ALA and the connections with those who really make those last, but also the priorities of the legislators that serve us here in Illinois in terms of what issues they really care about as it relates to libraries, and that we can continue to connect with them on. So really highly recommended. There are some photos on Rails social media that were just posted today if you want to take a look and see what it looked like in DC, but a really, really incredible event. One thing I do want to make sure you're all aware of is that while we were there in DC yesterday, there was one additional federal piece of legislation that was filed that I want to make sure everybody's aware of. And that is House Resolution 7661. This was actually filed by an Illinois representative, Representative Mary Miller, who covers Illinois District 15. There are 17 Republicans who have co-signed to this bill. It is a book banning bill that's very similar to those that have passed in some, like in Iowa, Idaho. It essentially amends the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965 to prohibit use of funds to purchase material that they're defining as sexually oriented material. But that material is defined as anything that has any kind of gender representation outside of cisgender. They also go as far as to list a canon of books that are listed as classic literature. So one is essentially great books of Western literature that was published in 1990. And the other 2 books that they're considering to be representative of the canon are both published by Compass, which is a Christian publisher. So this is something that your representative should be aware has been published. This would be a federal law as opposed to the state laws that we have seen. So it's important to make sure that there's an awareness of that. I would have listed that in your federal updates and reports, but because it's so new, we wanted to share that with you all today. I did want to give you an opportunity in case you had questions to ask about either.
You said it was HR 76.
7661.
That's a house, that's an HR.
Yes, it sure is. It's called Stop the Sexualization of Children Act is the name of the act.
I have a question.
Yes, Karen.
You met with all those representatives. Were they all library positive, or did you get a strong feeling that maybe they weren't? Because you said you wanted to know what their, not that they hate libraries, but like where were they all like in the top libraries were like top 5, or was there one that was like it's in the top 10 but it's like 9?
I think they do all serve on different committees and have different priorities sort of based on what they're working on. We did ask for things like that they sign on to those Dear Appropriator letters for things like IMLS funding and IAL funding. And to be honest, of the people that I met with, there was wide support for those things. It was a bipartisan group. I did meet with one Republican representative who did also sign a Dear Appropriator letter for IMLS funding and mentioned that one of their priorities is to make sure that funding for the state and state services are maintained on a federal level. So I do think that there is bipartisan support on some of these issues, and E-rate is another one where many rural libraries really depend on support for E-rate and broadband. Broadband speeds are often disproportionately slow in some of those rural communities. So that's another concern for some of those representatives that tend to lean more Republican, are usually representing more rural areas of the state. But as I said, this piece that was just filed was filed by an Illinois representative. I don't think any of our colleagues were able to meet her, but there was also no one in the delegation that was a constituent.
So I have a question.
Yes, Roberta.
So in this House resolution, you said there was a canon of books listed. Are those books that should be banned or books that could not be banned?
Books that could not be banned.
That's what I assumed. Okay, thank you.
Of course. I did want to make a note, and I did mention this to Ron earlier, but Rob, one of the great conversations that we had with Representative LaHood was in being able to speak about Peoria Public Library and the bike giveaway and talk about Ron Holohan and Dunlop Public Library and being in that district and how important that is to the services of Rails. So I do want to thank you for the opportunity to visit your libraries and to hear about those programs. I think that was really impactful in those conversations. I also wanted to mention another piece that just was not in your report, and this is representative of some of the things that are happening around Cook County and some of the tax disbursement issues. Some of you, I think, are knowing on an ongoing basis that there are many libraries within Cook County that have been very affected by not receiving funds from Cook County that they were expecting due to tax disbursements. We did share, I think last month, that we had helped to create an infographic with our team to be able to communicate that with Cook County. And I will be attending a meeting between the Cook County Coalition that has been organized mostly by Sue Reinders and Amy Franco. But we're having a meeting with Cook County leadership on March 4th. So you know how that goes. Okay, beyond that, we did want to make sure you were aware of some of these other issues that are happening. In terms of federal funding, some good news on February 3rd, President Trump did sign a budget that funds most government services through fiscal year 2026. That does include almost level funding for IMLS. Because of the way that that's organized here in Illinois, having that funding for fiscal year 2026 means that Rails funding is intact through fiscal 27 because of the way that funding moves forward. Congress did also pass a $1.4 million increase for library programs run by the IMLS through Library Services and Technology. That brings LSTA funding to $212.5 million for fiscal 26. Level funding also included for the school library focused program Innovative Approaches to Literacy. That's the piece that we mentioned that's currently at $30 million, and ALA is seeking an increase to $50 million in future budgets. ALA really noted that this is because of the advocacy that came out as part of these processes last year. There were more Dear Appropriator letters signed than in previous years, and a lot of the support can really be shared due to the really important advocacy of library supporters that happened across the country. We know of a lot of that happened here in Illinois. I want to thank so many of our board members who were such strong advocates and pushed for that. We know so many of our members also worked very closely with their communities and made sure that they were aware of that. This also relates directly to, if you all recall, there was a Chicago Tribune article that featured Rails right on the cover to talk about how IMLS funds were used. So we're very proud of the message that went out, as well as that advocacy effort and where this led. So I just want to thank everyone who was part of that. I know so many of those even watching this meeting were also part of those efforts, and we're very appreciative. We did share that not all of the news that came out of the federal piece and the budget was positive. The Institute of Museum and Library Services did see a reduction in funds, largely because of elimination of some staff at IMLS. So they have less staff to process many of the grants that they do process. A smaller IMLS staff will administer grant funding operations. There was also a ProPublica article that I shared and that was linked. If you haven't had a chance to look at it, I would recommend taking a look at some of the changes in language that have happened in terms of the grant, just for awareness. It's just something that we all should know. On February 10th, the American Library Association and Trump administration did also jointly move to extend the briefing schedule while they engage in settlement negotiation. That's directly related to the lawsuit that ALA put forward, as opposed to the one from the Attorney General. So we are watching that, and that's the second extension in 6 months. ALA's joint response is now due April 20th, and the Department of Justice will have until May 4th to file a reply. So we've seen some extensions there. This is something we can expect to continue to see. There was also some updates about Illinois legislative updates, and you can see there are now some bill numbers to watch in terms of the priorities that have been set by the Illinois Library Association's Public Policy Committee and Executive Board. The first one is one you've heard about before. That's that House Bill 4261 that would increase annual grants to public libraries in the state, school library grants and the library system grants by 20%. That 20% is again reflected to, or it's meant to reflect the 20% inflationary increase to make sure that library system funding and libraries funding is kept whole. That bill now, which was filed by Martha Duder, has bipartisan support. There are 10 additional co-sponsors when I wrote this last week. So if passed, this bill would be effective immediately. So we're watching that with a lot of interest. House Bill 3411, that is related to open educational resources, or OER, and that would appropriate about $3 million from the General Revenue Fund to the Secretary of State for permanent grant funding for that Illinois academic libraries and the importance of OER. Again, that really does help to control costs, particularly for students. Textbook costs are one of the biggest costs that are really difficult to control, and this does support that. And then House Bill 5236, which was filed by Tracy Katz-Mule, and House Bill 5279, which was filed by Representative Nabil Sayed. That amends the Digital Library Protection Act. This is the ebook piece that we've been talking about. So currently there are two bills. We expect that at some point they may be combined into one bill. The language here reflects that language that is in the Connecticut law that we've been speaking about, that's really meant to make sure that there are more reasonable terms for libraries moving forward. New Jersey also has a bill that's moving forward, and there are several other states that are working on this. Our Rails team has been really integral in terms of making this move forward, especially Anna Beam and Layla Heath, but our marketing and communications group also created some really incredible infographics in order to share news about this. This came out at the Illinois Library Legislative meetups, but since then we've also shared those in social media. So on January 30th, probably see some updates of those popping up. We also released a Canva template for that, which means libraries can put their own branding on it if they want to share it with their communities. And we've gotten a lot of national attention for those infographics, actually from publications like Words and Money, or ALA gave us a shout out in their ALA Direct to really show this. When I was at the ALA National Library Legislative Day, I heard from several libraries and library organizations from across the country who were so impressed and proud of those and really excited to use them in their own efforts. So I do again want to applaud the staff here for their work on this and making a very complex issue understandable for communities nationwide.
Just I insert a little bit right here. I was happy to meet Representative Tracy Katz-Mule at the legislative day in Northbrook, and had a great conversation with her. And turns out one of her best friends is a high school librarian who is a dear friend of mine. So I think someone is talking in her ear, which is helpful too. I love to see that she was the one that filed a bill.
We're really excited to hear more about these bills and more bills. The time for bills being filed is now closed. So Public Policy Committee is meeting on Monday, and we'll go through the large scale bill list to talk about other bills that affect library issues that are sort of outside of these legislative priorities. So what you'll see in your updates each month will be more around bills that are moving forward through the process. Many, many bills are filed in each legislative year that never move forward. And so a lot of what we will highlight each month now are the things that we're watching that have the potential to be made into law. Any other questions while we're here, or comments about any of the Illinois legislative pieces?
This question occurred to me. Go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, I just would like everybody to remember and know that those public policy committee meetings are open to the public, the library public. So you can feel free to log on to your ILA website and take a look at those. I think this is a committee that would love to hear from more of us. I think that there's never, nobody's ever going to turn down having more strong voices alongside with them. So, feel free to hear directly from the sources as well.
Yeah, and I think committee applications are also open currently for Illinois Library Association. So anybody who has a real desire or passion for legislative issues can always throw their hat in the ring to serve on the committee as well.
So this was a question I had. I don't know the answer, but maybe it is something I should take to the PPC. It's great to see this bill for the funding of the regional systems, but I was wondering what bill possibly funds Carly, which is a system that's important to the academic libraries, how that is funded. Maybe I should ask them about that.
Yeah, we can look into I'm not sure exactly where the state law piece ends up on that, but we can definitely take a look.
Monica,
Yeah, hi,
I'm having dinner with Senator Kaler on the 19th of March, so I'll try to remember and email you a couple of days in advance if there's something you want me to talk to him about. I'd be happy to. And there's an outside chance Sharon, Representative Chung from Bloomington will be there also. I haven't got her confirmed yet.
Rob, I'm really appreciative of that, and I would love to be in contact with you about that. I think especially these main issues that we're mentioning here are high priority for us, but I know there may be some others that ILA is opposing moving forward that I'd also like to make sure we share with you.
So this is another organization I serve on the board of, and so I really have to talk about that organization primarily, but I can work some stuff in. We're lobbying for things also.
We really appreciate how involved you are. Truly, it gives us a lot of perspective. All right, just a couple more updates we wanted to share with you. Of course, our strategic planning process is now moving forward. We're really excited that we now have agreement from folks to serve on our strategic planning sort of steering committee, including Captain Yanikoski and Gwen Gregory from the library board. We are really excited to be able to share that as it moves forward. We're working on scheduling our first meeting now, and our team is also hard at work on the surveys. Thank you for your feedback last month. So we will be doing a staff survey and then a member survey. Board members are welcome to respond to the member survey with your feedback, and then there will be lots of other opportunity for the board to be able to comment on the strategic plan as it gets into development. But in terms of that kind of initial response, that member survey is the best place to put your thoughts on the next strategic planning process. So we're really thrilled to see that moving forward, but wanted to make sure that you were aware of that as well. There's some things about Find More here that I'm going to save since Layla and Anna are going to be, Layla and Barb, Barb, are going to be presenting on that later in the meeting. We're really thrilled to share some of those pieces with you as well. But I did want to open it up just in case there are any other comments about anything else that appeared in your Rails report this month. Right, thank you all.
All right, thank you, Monica. And next, Barb Miller will present the Service of the Month report on Find More Illinois. And Layla.
Since Layla and I were trying to figure out what we're doing this in. Layla, did you wish to start?
Start us off. I just wanted to mention a couple exciting updates in February. First of all, our CCS group of libraries have been participating as a consortia in Find More for the past year and a half, and we're up for the decision about whether they were going to renew their membership. And they voted this month. They voted to renew for another 3 years. So we are really thrilled about the decision and very excited about it. And a couple things that it really brings to the program. First of all, as a group, their collection is roughly 5 million. So a sizable part of that is brought to the Find More collection. But the other thing that it brings is the data that as we're building this program is really important. And they're bringing information in that data about how things are happening within a consortia, what's happening with Find More when it's in a large consortia, and what kind of needs do they have. And then that tells us kind of what's happening, but also in having the conversations with the individual libraries there, it's why it's happening. And so they have such strong leadership in that group, and we're in conversations with them. And even, there's these commonalities within the consortia, but then there's all these individual things happening too within the libraries, within the consortia. So really providing a solid foundation for these next 3 years that is really exciting and letting us continue to grow the program. I also wanted to mention, and so thank you to the CCS libraries and the leadership here too. And also I wanted to talk about the standalone libraries because we have 12.5 standalones. And again, the data that they're bringing into the program and their needs as standalone libraries, we're just seeing the differences and kind of how that translates and what we need to do. Alex Ancina is here, and he's really been a strong leader in this and really in providing help with leadership and mentorship about the data and the kind of all the platform and all that technical stuff. So thank you for that, Alex. And then we also have our academic lender-only program. And we're excited about the growth on that. It is really so heartening to hear they just want to share their collections. It's really important to them. It keeps their collections moving, and Find More provides a way to do that. We now have 10 libraries that are participating. Another one just signed and another one is reviewing their contract. So they bring a diversity to the collection, as well as growth to the size. We are over 9 million now in the collection, which is really exciting. One of our first benchmarks is 10 million. So you'll all hear about it when we get that number. And with the CCS libraries and some of the new libraries that have joined, we will be at, when we have a few new CCS that will be coming on, we'll be at 99 and our benchmark there was 100. So we're getting close to the 100 libraries. And so we're really excited about just kind of the things that are happening in Find More. And Gwen Gregory, thank you to you for your leadership on the academics. Gwen is our go-to about that and has really been a cheerleader and a resource for our academics to go through too when they have questions. So to our participating libraries, to our libraries who are thinking about participating, we truly appreciate it. And Barb is going to provide a lot more details.
So I'm Barb Miller, Consortial Services Supervisor here at Rails, to talk a little bit more about Find More. I'm just going to do a quick review of what it is. I know we have many newer board members, so everybody is on the same page. Find More Illinois is an interlibrary loan platform that provides access to all of the participating libraries' holdings in one seamless interface. So libraries of all types and sizes can join. It doesn't matter what type of catalog software they use. This is a great option for our Rails libraries who have decided not to join a shared catalog, but they still want to share resources. Anybody can search the Find More Illinois catalog. You do not have to be participating in Find More Illinois to do that. The catalog continues to grow. As Layla mentioned, we're at just over 9 million in holdings and a little over 3 million in bib records. Few examples of materials accessible through Find More Illinois. We have over 44,000 large print items, more than 5,000 computer games, and materials in 150 world languages. Both patrons and staff from participating libraries can locate and request materials from other participating libraries across the entire state. They'll be delivered directly to their home library via Rails delivery. Libraries that join Find More Illinois receive training and consulting from Rails staff that we scale to the needs of each individual library. Promotional materials are available to Find More Illinois participants on the Find More Illinois webpage, and we also provide a listserv and e-newsletter to all of our members. The Find More Illinois pilot was launched in 2018 with just under 20 libraries. And since then, we have grown to, as Layla mentioned, over 90 participating libraries. FMI libraries cover a wide range of types. Some are in consortia, some are standalone. The breakdown right now is we have 71 public, 12 school, 9 academic, and 1 special. And as Layla mentioned, we have more academics in the wings. In 2025 is when we launched the academic lender only pilot, which to date has increased that participation from our 1 academic library that we had for many, many years to the 9 that we have now. This lets a lot of academics lend with other libraries, especially those that don't have OCLC access. And that is a large number in Illinois. So we are increasing ILL statistics for the academic libraries, and we're also fostering connections between school and academic libraries through this program. Finally, Find More Illinois is currently exploring a partnership with Libraries Across Wisconsin, which would further access to materials to Find More Illinois libraries. So I am open to any questions unless Monica, you wanted to jump in with more about Wisconsin before we questions.
Thank you, Barb. I mean, I think you can hear how much Find More has grown, particularly over the last few years. I want to really thank Barb and Eric for what they have put into this program. I think that Layla has also done a lot to bring a different perspective, and under Anne's leadership before, it was really an incredible program. I think I'm so excited right now about the growth because I think we can start to see where resource sharing across Illinois can really potentially take a leap with the Find More platform as these things grow. As all of you know, part of the System Act and of course the #1 goal in our strategic plan is around resource sharing. It means that everything we do comes down to being able to share material and share access to material. And that's what the Find More platform was always meant to be able to do. So to be able to see this kind of adoption happening and to see it even looking into places like Wisconsin is really incredible. I think one thing that really had not occurred to me originally, but it got mentioned in some of these conversations we were having with CCS, was around how having 9 million in our current catalog, and then looking at Wisconsin and seeing that Wisconsin only had 5 million, in terms of their whole piece already, that we're already a huge program. And so continuing to see that growth and the potential for that growth is really huge, especially as it relates to libraries that can't afford to be part of OCLC. There's so many, as Barb mentioned, across our state that are not participating, don't have other ways to receive material outside of, a very antiquated form that they can use to try to get something from ALA, that having a platform like this is really a great opportunity for us potentially statewide. So we're continuing to have these conversations to see how we can continue to grow the program, how we can meet the needs of those who are currently participating in the program. I want to thank Jennifer at her library for participating and bringing yet one participant from yet another consortium into the program so we can continue to work on that. So really exciting program. Very exciting.
I'll speak up and say that from a school library point of view, I'm happy to be one of the 9 school libraries. And just this past week, I book talked to a group of sophomore students, and I must have really sold these 3 books, which we had one book. But through Find More Illinois, now I have a student from all 3 classes who can read this book or that book. And another case, a class is using a book that we have 1 copy of as a literature circle book, and their paperback copies, the delivery got delayed. And so they needed to start reading this book. And so Find More Illinois, right? Here's 4 copies of this book for this literature circle to start reading. So just in 1 week, that was the things that it has helped us with.
I was going to say too, just shout out to the implementation team, if we've gone through the process, and again, being so, for our viewers and our thousands of fans out there listening, just know that it's just like every other Rails interaction that you will have. It is very, it feels low stress. It is very supportive. And I think that for, as other libraries are considering, is this a space in my budget? It's an easy yes in a time when budgets get a little tighter. So they did a great job.
So explain to me why libraries are not part of Find More Illinois. Because Peoria, Dunlap, Chillicothe, Fond du Lac, Morton are not.
It's up to each individual library to decide if they are going to participate, and there is a cost to participation. So that is something to consider. As Jen just mentioned, it's something that you either build into your budget, or in some cases, if you're not able to, then you just have to determine, is it going to be something possible for the following fiscal year?
So because we're taking on the platform costs for this program, we have to price it a cost recovery in order to make sure that we're able to maintain this program heading forward. But what I will say is I come from a state that has a statewide platform where that's not a barrier. So in Michigan, there's a program called MelCat that is paid for by the state library there. And so all libraries in the state can join and lend with each other so they don't have those additional barriers. And in that case, there are many more libraries that participate because there's some that for whatever reason can't afford the cost of joining. So it is a barrier for some folks, but I think for folks who really need to be able to resource share because they don't have a lot of other options, or for those who are just really interested in continuing to move resource sharing across the state, which is what many of the participants in Find More are really focused on, they are willing to pay that cost in order to be part of it. Does that answer your question, Rob? I know it's...
So we have a very large budget. So what does it cost to be a part of Find More Illinois? And I can ask these questions at Peoria Public. So
It depends on the operating budget for the public library. That's what the fee is based on. And and anybody can get those numbers on our website. They're posted. And we'd be happy to talk to, Peoria or to you, about the library specifically. And sometimes it's just finding out kind of where it can fit in their flow of interlibrary loan and if it makes sense with that. So we would be happy to talk with them. As Barb mentioned, it's oftentimes, it's a very individual decision for each library as to what, that looks like. Which is true for any.
Are there any other questions, comments?
What are the next steps with Wisconsin? I know that's
Okay, Wisconsin, we have a meeting on the books with, I jokingly say everybody from Rails, which it isn't truly, but it's a lot of Rails people, meeting with a lot of people from Wisconsin. I have been talking to 1-2 people, somebody who kind of has a similar position to mine at WisCat. WisCat also uses SHAREit. Actually, the entire state uses SHAREit. I would back up, but only a portion of them are in the program called ISSE. So we could easily do ISSE rating right now through Autographics. But I was curious, like they said, well, we have 500 more libraries. I said, do tell me more. It's like, how can we access these other 500 libraries? The nice thing is if we access all of them, we get the entire University of Wisconsin system as part of the package. So this is where we now have to work out the logistics of how do we access the catalog? Do they have a widget? Do they have some other, live thing that we can attach so people can search? Transportation, of course, would be a question. I mean, there's just all these little things that we need to hammer out, but it doesn't, in my conversations at this point, as far as I can take it, it doesn't seem insurmountable. Otherwise, I wouldn't have moved it forward to anyone else with, hey, this might be something we want to look into. So now we just need to, we've had quite a bit of back and forth probably over the last 12 months. So now it's just talking about very detailed specific things that we've both Wisconsin and Illinois have determined are, these are things that are really important that we need to hammer out. I mean, first thing that popped into my head is like, okay, we use Illinois code. Well, what do you use? Because you're not Illinois. They're very, very similar. They sent us a copy. So it's just setting up some sort of agreement where, we hit both points in both of them. So we all understand what the rules are if we're going to be participating in this. Does that answer?
Yeah,
okay.
Big undertaking. It's exciting.
Very exciting.
We're really excited about it. Yeah. And Barb's been working on this for such a long time, and it's so thrilling to see it kind of moving into this space where it's becoming more of a reality. We did actually have a brief conversation with the state library as well, just to make sure they were aware, because they also have conversations with the state library in Wisconsin around these issues. And so that was really interesting, especially because of the kind of study and look they're doing at their contract renewal for OCLC heading into 2027. Because that's been part of the ISLAC discussions around priorities for state money. So we're hoping to be able to continue those conversations as well, but it's really nice to see the program growing.
So I know that in academic libraries, like people are especially interested in, what school libraries using this. So are more schools interested in joining? How's that going? Trying to think at schools. We had one join recently. Probably in the last 6 weeks. I just got 2 more requests for quotes from 2 other schools. It seems like, I will admit, most of my focus has been academic. I mean, so I haven't really been doing a lot of large outreach. We will usually hear from schools. I will start getting requests for information near the end of school year, so they can plan for their fiscal is generally the same as ours, so July 1, so they can kind of build in and determine if they're going to join in the fall. So I'm curious to see, and if you want to send me an email when we get into May, I can keep you updated as to kind of how many I've heard from to that point, because that seems to be the popular time of year to start asking questions about joining. Great.
One comment we got from schools that it can be really helpful is when their students live in unserved areas, so they can't get the books from their public library and they're able to secure the books for them. So it does, there's some good needs that it can provide.
Well, thank you, Barb and Leila, for that update. Next on the agenda is a report from the Illinois State Library, and I believe we have Mark Schaefer.
Yes, good afternoon and greetings from the State Library. And I would ask you to bear with me. I'm on a 2-week cough that it only happens when I have to talk. So it's going to be a challenge to get through this without coughing. And I apologize for that. There was an announcement that's been emailed inviting public libraries to apply for up to $100,000 to purchase technology-based security measures for the library. And these security grants are authorized by Public Act 104-108. $1.1 million has been allocated to this effort. The first round of security grants is being offered to public libraries, and public libraries are where the biggest threat has been reported. Grant funds must be used for technology-based security enhancements in the library, and this can be accomplished through the purchase and installation of security measures, as well as through contracted security personnel to recommend technology-based security improvements. Those applications are due by April 15th, coming up in a couple of months. Moving on, the Secretary of State's first of many budget hearings is next week for the FY27 budget. And then the Illinois State Library and every Secretary of State department has been involved in an efficiency study for the past year. The evaluator suggested that the state library conduct a statewide survey of all libraries regarding services and grants, including grant-funded services from the library systems. So the state library has moved forward with this recommendation to survey the entire library community. A survey of the Illinois State Library's grants, programs, and services was emailed to academic and special libraries earlier this week. School libraries will receive their survey next week. I believe it's the 5th. And then that will be followed by the public libraries. And I think I remember that it's the 12th that's going to go out. The due dates are staggered depending on the library type, and the results will help target and prioritize future services. As many of you know, our nation celebrates the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence this year. As part of America 250, all public libraries received an email with a link to the library resource guide and information about the partnership between the Illinois America 250 Commission and the Illinois Office of Tourism to produce a commemorative Illinois passport for America's 250th anniversary. A copy of the library resource guide has been mailed to every public library. The passport highlights Illinois historic sites from Cahokia Mountain State Historic Site to the Ulysses S. Grant home in Galena. The passports are currently being printed and will also be mailed to every public library when we receive them. The State Library, the State Museum, the State Archives, and possibly the Supreme Court, we don't know that for sure yet, are planning a coordinated Capitol Complex event and events the weekend beginning July 17th to celebrate America 250. We have new staff at the Illinois State Library. Robert Edwards has joined the State Library Literacy Team. Some of you, of your members may remember Robert from his time at Decatur Public Library and at Atwood Hammond Public Library District. Then, because the Illinois State Library is a Center of the Book affiliate of the Library of Congress, we will be working with them in partnership with PBS on a new video series entitled American Stories, A Reading Road Trip. This series will showcase local writers and poets that have had influence on states and regions. 9 states have been featured thus far, Illinois, and the remaining states will be filmed over the next 6 months. And finally, the Secretary of State, Illinois State Library's FY27 Adult Literacy Grant Program applications are due on or before March 16th, so that's 2 weeks. In FY26, our current fiscal year, our office awarded 101 literacy grants totaling more than $6.7 million. I know I just saw in our email today, we've received our first 2 grant applications. They're overachievers because we don't usually get them this far out from the due date. Does anyone have any questions?
Mark, we want to extend our thanks to the Illinois State Library for the grants that are available. And of course, to our Secretary of State, Alexi Janulius. It was great to see those announcements this week. And I know people are so appreciative of what those grants can do for their libraries and communities. So please extend our thanks to the Secretary.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that report, Mark. Moving on to new business and a review of the Rails investment portfolio.
This is our twice a year process. So the Rails fiscal accountability policy does require the Rails board review the investment portfolio in August and at the August meeting and at the February meeting to assess the effectiveness of the investment portfolio in meeting the safety, liquidity, rate of return, diversification, and overall general performance for the organization. I've included the list of investments and deposits in my financial report as of January 31st. The majority of Rails's funds are held in 2 liquid accounts with Wintrust, our money market account and our checking account. The checking account is kept at a minimal balance with the bulk of the funds held in that money market account to maximize interest income. That account's currently earning 3.95%. Both of these accounts are secured with a combination of collateral and FDIC coverage. The FDIC coverage is maximized by splitting the balances between banks within the Wintrust network of banks. The remainder is secured by mortgage-backed collateral held by a third party in Rails's name. The remainder of the liquid portion of Rails's funds are held in money market accounts with Illinois Funds and PTMA, which are both local government investment pools. The Illinois Funds is collateralized by repurchase agreements at 102% of the balance. The PTMA account is collateralized very similarly to Wintrust by FDIC insurance using the Intrafine Network Deposits Program, which splits the balances between banks within that Intrafine Network program and banks that are members of that program. The Illinois Funds is currently earning 3.78%, and the PTMA account is currently earning 3.584%. And Rails does have investments in addition to these accounts. We have 17 CDs, as well as a small number of U.S. Treasury bonds that were bequeathed to Rails by a former ALS staff member. Both types of investments are fully backed or insured by the U.S. government or FDIC insurance. The average interest rate that Rails is currently earning on our CDs is 3.818%. The CDs have a total face value of $4,209,242. And this face value is a little over 14% of Rails's total cash and investment balance. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or any discussion?
All right, thank you, Sharon. Next up is it Jessica or is it Dan? New member application.
Thank you. Jessica was traveling today. She gave some presentations at the Hayne DuPage Institute Day for school libraries. So she asked if I would fill in. She wasn't sure if she was going to make it, so she asked me to fill in. So hello, everyone. Good afternoon. We have 2 requests for membership today. The first one is La Harpe Community School District 347. La Harpe, this is located in La Harpe, Illinois, in Hancock County. The district serves 200 students in grades K through 8. Denise Cost serves as the librarian. She's part of the specials rotation. La Harpe learned of this opportunity to join Rails from Jeanette Gladu, superintendent. They were able to connect with Rails staff at the IASB conference to begin the membership process, which is great. And they're excited to borrow books from other libraries, applying for the school district per capita grant, and learning opportunities for library staff. The other member is North Park Elementary School. North Park is a private independent school in Chicago. The school serves 240 students from preschool to grade 8. Librarian Laura McCamick is in her second year of librarianship. North Park is community-oriented and practices school-wide service learning. Each grade level has a service partner. Laura's been using the databases with students and is looking forward to networking access and vendor discounts. North Park learned about Rails membership from the virtual town hall that we did in January with Leah Gregory and Jeanette Drucke organizing. So they would each make great Rails members. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Having spent time in La Harpe, they need all the help they can get.
All right, well, if there's no further questions, may I have a motion to approve the membership for La Harpe Community School District 347 and North Park Elementary School, and to submit it to the State Library for final approval?
Monica
So moved.
Caldecott, I move that we accept 2 new school library members.
Second, Rob Parks.
Thanks, Rob.
Okay, so moved by Monica and seconded by Rob. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No. Motion carries. Welcome. Monica will next talk about the April off-site meeting.
Well, as you all know, we like to do 2 offsite meetings throughout the course of our year. So for our April meeting, which is for Friday, April 24th, Gwen Gregory has generously agreed to host us at Northern Illinois University in DeKalb. It's been quite some time since the Rails board has met at an academic library, so we're really excited for the opportunity. Gwen, anything you want to share?
Well, we're putting together some exciting tours of our library, and we're excited to show off an academic library and try and focus on some of the things that are different than you might see in your public or school or special libraries. And Rails staff came and had a site visit to make sure the technology would work, which was great. And so that all seems good.
For much of the staff, there is not a considerable travel period. So we will be organizing things like a hotel or dinner just based on how far away from DeKalb you are, as opposed to a full group the night ahead. So pay or look for more communication on that as we get a little bit closer. But we're really looking forward to the chance to meet together, to tour Northern, and hopefully to meet with some of our members who are close to DeKalb.
Right, and maybe there's even some people here that are alones.
All right.
Not the degree doesn't say that, but the first 2 years I spent there.
Oh. All right, thank you. Monica will now review the revised fiscal accountability policy.
So at their January 28th meeting, the Rails Policy Committee voted to recommend the updated version of the fiscal accountability policy to be approved by the Rails board at their February meeting. In the memo that was included with the updated version of the fiscal accountability policy, it sort of details the changes that went into the policy as you see it today. That does include in section 3, general subsection B, the amount of the treasurer's bond needed to obtain. As you all remember, there was some legislation passed a year or 2 ago that changed the amount that was needed to be from 50% to 10%. So this change will reflect that need. There is also in section 10, board of directors, subsection A, the last sentence, the Rails travel reimbursement policy for the board of directors was changed to the Rails travel policy. That's because we had a sort of older policy that the policy committee actually looked into, updated and removed and changed. So this is the name of the new existing policy. There's also some changes in that section 11 travel subsection B, where they added things like rail and bus as reimbursable transit options. The line without prior approval from the executive director added was changed to the approval of items exceeded the GSA rate. Expense reports were changed to expense reimbursement requests because that is the nomenclature that we use here at Rails. Original receipts was changed to detailed receipts. The Rails Board of Directors will now annually review as opposed to periodically review, and that was just to allow for a regular cadence. And then a paragraph of potential examples of non-reimbursable expenses was removed, and that was because in favor of creating a more procedural document that would detail all of those items, so it was easy to change as opposed to having to bring it to the board to change every time we wanted to make a policy update. Policy Chair Catherine Yanikoski is on the call. Catherine, anything you would add or anything that I missed in terms of the changes that were recommended by the committee?
Nope, really thorough. Nothing to add. Thanks, though.
I will take this opportunity to once again thank the policy committee for the very detailed work that they do month over month for these updates. The group really has been focused on trying to get through our entire handbook, but also does things like reviews, things like the fiscal accountability policy when we need to update and change them. So I want to thank them for all the work that goes into this process. Any questions about any of these changes?
Well, I would also like to thank the policy committee for all their work, which I know is very detailed and are progressing on the employee handbook, I hear, which is great. So eventually we will be seeing that huge, gigantic task coming to us for approval. All right, if there's no more questions about this policy, may I have a motion and a second to approve the revised fiscal accountability policy?
So moved. Walsey?
Second, Karen.
Stacy, please call roll.
Monica Colacott,
Yes.
Jean Carroll. Yes. Megan Gove,
Yes.
Glenn Gregory,
Yes.
Ron Hallahan,
Yes.
Jennifer Hobanek,
Yes.
Amanda Kowalski,
Yes.
Rob Parks,
Yes.
Carolyn
Yes.
Bennett.
Yes.
Alex Fancina,
Yes.
Karen Wojtek,
Yes.
and Kathleen Yanikoski.
Yes.
We will next move on to a discussion and approval of the at-large vacancy on the Rails Executive Committee.
So I did send you all an email about this, but due to the resignation of Yolanda Wilburn, the Rails Board does need to vote to appoint a new at-large member of the Rails Board Executive Committee. So just because this can be a bit confusing, there are at-large members of the Rails Board. This is a separate piece. This is one role that is on the Executive Committee that's also referred to as an at-large committee member, and that is the role that we need to be able to fill today. The executive committee does meet on an as-needed basis. They do things like new appointments to the board, but we also have a new process that's just beginning this year where the executive committee is annually reviewing some of the policies that need that. So for instance, the succession plan is looked at by the executive committee each year. The AI ethical policy is also looked at annually. And so there are some processes like that that are undertaken by the executive committee. And so that's what we're here to do today. I did list the section of the bylaws that sort of states the process around that. Yolanda's seat, because of the timing of when she resigned from the seat, will become part of the Rails election that will be moving forward this spring. Any questions about this process for now?
So this seat on the executive committee will just be for the rest of this.
That's right,
Fiscal
just
year.
until June 30th.
Yeah. But there is a meeting of the executive committee scheduled
In March.
on March 5th. Say,
No.
I'm sorry. So the bylaws state that the executive committee includes an at-large member, and I would like to nominate Dan Hovanek for that seat, who has experience serving on the executive committee last year. Unless there's any objection, may I have a motion and a second to elect her to the at-large seat of the executive committee? Oh, I should say her name, Jennifer Hovanek.
So moved, Alex.
Second, Senate.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Nay. The motion carries. Thank you. Welcome to the executive committee again.
Yeah, you did do it.
Last in new business is Joe talking about the Rails digital accessibility statement.
Thank you, Gwen, and good afternoon, everyone. There is a draft of the Rails digital accessibility statement in your packet. I imagine many of your own libraries might already have a digital accessibility statement posted on your website, or maybe you are in the process of developing one in response to the Title II ADA requirements. So this statement is just Rails, I guess, formal articulation of our commitment and responsibility in that same context. As I'm sure many of you know, updated Title II ADA rules reflects that public entities like libraries and like Rails have an obligation to ensure that our web content is accessible to individuals with disabilities. And the statement affirms Rails' commitment to meeting those applicable standards. It outlines where we are taking steps towards full compliance and continuous improvement in this area. It also clarifies, I think, how accessibility applies in some specific areas or components of our website. So, for example, member-posted content, such as like our library announcement and news portion of our website. It also adds some information on third-party vendors that are participating in our deals and discounts program. And our goal really, I think, with this statement was to kind of strike, among other things, is to really kind of strike a balance between setting some clear expectations and also maintaining legal clarity, I suppose. I do just want to take a moment and commend our webmaster just generally. So Brian Smith has prioritized web accessibility long before many libraries were really starting to formalize this work to meet those federal deadlines. And I think that his proactive approach around this has really been beneficial to us and positioned Rails well in this regard. And I want to commend the Digital Accessibility Committee, our sort of internal team, for their collaborative work in developing the statement and helping guide us toward full adherence by our April 27 deadline. So hopefully this statement reflects not only compliance, but also what is just our broader commitment to equitable access for all, which of course is ingrained in our strategic plan. We don't need a formal approval by the board, but we certainly did want to share this with you today in case there were any comments or any feedback. So that is what I had to share.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate this update on how Rails is dealing with this issue, which of course many of us are dealing with in our library.
Yeah, and of course, you know, we in this and many areas like it, our dual role of wanting to be doing the right things and what we need to do internally, but in doing that, hopefully being a leader and being able to offer some leadership to our members in this area. And we will continue the great CE that our CE team has done around accessibility, the resources that we will continue to add to our Pulse page to support libraries who need it in this area. So thank you. Thank you all.
Any other comments or questions? Well, thank you, Joe. Next, we will move on to the board development topic of library advocacy at the state and national level. Our guest speaker today is Amelia Aldred from the American Library Association. Amelia is the Deputy Director of State and Local Advocacy. Welcome, Amelia, and thank you for taking the time to speak to us today.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here and to speak to everyone. As Gwen had just said, I'm the Deputy Director of State and Local Advocacy at ALA. I'm in the Chicago office, so near all of you in Illinois. And today I'm going to be talking about some legislative trends. One of the things I do in my position is work with chapters and work with our chapter relations team, as well as our Office for Intellectual Freedom, to track state legislation, both adverse legislation, library-friendly legislation, kind of just neutral, but library-related legislation, and to see what are the trends, both in the legislation itself, and then also what are the trends to which our chapters, our members, different libraries are responding to it. Is it okay for me to share my screen with some information and slides on them?
Yes, please.
Awesome. One moment, please, then. All right. Folks can see it. Can you give me a thumbs up? Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So state legislative trends and what we're looking at. So I'm looking at what we're seeing most recently, especially since kind of end of last year, beginning of this year, and how that compares to what we've been seeing in the past. So first off, we are seeing fewer, just in terms of pure quantity, of adverse bills this legislative session so far, but some of that is due to legislative session scheduling. So for those that states that may have a legislative session every other year, they may be out of session. Also depending on kind of some of the states and when bills are introduced and how short or long their legislative session is. So some of this I think is due to scheduling, but overall just looking at pure quantity of things that have been filed towards the end of last year, beginning of this year, not quite as many. But we are certainly still seeing adverse legislation. Within adverse legislation, our top target in terms of we tag and categorize the legislation depending on what it focuses on. So to take a step back, the most common things we see: generous content legislation, penalization for librarians and library staff. We see obscenities, things related to obscenity statutes, funding, so things related to library funding, governance, how libraries are governed, parents' rights, so especially parents' bills of rights. Some of our top ones, book rating is another one. So these are the common things we tag. So content censorship is what continues to be just the top thing that the adverse legislation and bills focus on. So, and it continues to focus on sexual content and using very broad definitions. So sometimes going as far to simply say nudity in the bill text. And in practice, as we know, this is actually applied much more to content featuring LGBTQIA authors, characters, or subjects. We also have had several bills focus specifically on quote unquote gender ideology, which sometimes is defined, sometimes is not, which always leads to an interesting question for me is it just the idea of gender? I know that's not the intent of the people who are usually writing the bills, but it plays to that very, very, very broad definition. So that is what we're seeing in terms of just content and the top focuses of adverse legislation. The second most popular topic for adverse legislation is parents' rights. So this gets into both parents' bills of rights, establishing parents' bills of rights on the state level, and then also individual bills that specifically call for parents' rights to access library catalogs and checkout records and to restrict their children's access in various ways. Sometimes these bills simply are stating what already happens at libraries, that if parents or anyone can go to their public library catalog and see what books are available there. So it is often written in those cases, I think, by legislators who want to make a statement, but don't necessarily want the work of doing something different. So it's an easy win as far as they're concerned. And those tend to concern us less if it's just repeating what libraries are already doing. But then we also, as I said, have ones that are specifically about parents' ability to restrict their children's access or to check out records, and sometimes using very vague language. So this is another thing that we're just seeing more and more of. We also are seeing attempts to redefine legal obscenity. There's a lot of different ways we're seeing these attempts. Sometimes it is trying to expand it. Sometimes for those who are familiar with American obscenity law and how it is legally defined, it takes tries to take out parts of the Miller test. So under US law, our precedent is that for something to be considered legally obscene, it can't have any scientific, it must be without scientific, I'm going to try to remember it all, scientific, artistic, literary, educational, or artistic or political value. And tries to take out one of those or to otherwise redefine it. So we're seeing attempts again to redefine obscenity. And we're also seeing attempts to get rid of the affirmative defense for educators and specifically library staff, which is really affirmative defense came out of the 1960s and around especially sex education and health education. And it was to curtail frivolous lawsuits so that a teacher who is teaching, especially an approved health education curriculum, could not be arrested for obscenity as an attempt to censor curriculum and really just tie up a school district in frivolous and expensive lawsuits. So that's what the affirmative defense is. It is not a get out of jail free card. It just affirms that if someone is doing their job in good faith, that they cannot be arrested for obscenity as an educator. And so we see an attempt to get rid of this. And that's another thing we're continuing to see as a trend legislatively. We are continuing to get some anti-library association bills. And this is a trend we've seen for a few years. It started with specifically anti-ALA bills and naming the American Library Association in the bills. Then it's moved on to specific state associations. That's more of what we saw last year. And now we are seeing an attempt to focus more on restricting public funds from membership dues for an association, professional associations, still specifically focused on libraries and librarians. And I think the reason that there's happening is because they've got in other states where this has been attempted, it's been too targeted. It's overstepped, it's been too obvious. They've gotten dinged, and I think their legal counsel, I know in several cases, has said this is just a lawsuit waiting to happen. But if you restrict the ability for it to spend public funds on membership dues, that's a lot harder to argue against. It's a lot more palatable. It's going to possibly be a little harder to fight back against. We still argue that it is specifically targeting one field over others, but that's been the workaround that we're seeing be attempted this legislative session. We're seeing less focus on drag queen story hours in libraries. There's been a couple bills, but not that many. That used to be, we saw a huge spike in that a couple years ago. There is still a few. Interestingly, they focused more on private businesses, not libraries, but also with extremely expansive definitions. So beforehand, very specific. Now it's starting to say things. Some of the bills we're seeing are things like someone dressed as a gender that is not their assigned gender at birth. But that's so broad that theoretically that could apply to a, female volunteer who's dressed as Old MacDonald to read Old MacDonald at a story time. It's that broadly written. So again, I think we're seeing attempts to get around some of the places where laws have been struck down or were too hard to get passed. Artificial intelligence. So this is something that has been very top of mind. It is not widely represented in adverse legislation. It has appeared occasionally in some, but what it is gaining traction is legislative arguments that we're seeing more and more, that when there's pushback against really excessive censorship policies that require a lot of staff time, put a lot of financial burden on local government, that the argument becomes in hearings, well, can't you just use AI for that? So we're seeing that pick up as an argument, but not as often codified actually in the bill. And then we're also seeing on more positive ends, because I would come in and start with all the negative stuff, but there is also positive things happening. One thing we're seeing is that freedom to read legislation continues to be pushed on the state level. We have several states that do have freedom to read bills. I think probably the most likely to be passed, New York, and Alaska potentially. They have a hearing scheduled for this next week. And what we've seen is that it's most successful when the state association supports it. So if this is written with the state association, with librarians, they have been involved from the beginning. They're very involved in the details of the legislation, and it has a broad coalition. So when it's working with other non-library associations, such as publishers, teachers, etc., that's where it's been the most effective and the most likely to be passed, which is not really a surprise, but it is, again, that we've seen now for several years. And then in terms of tactics within legislation, when we've been dealing with censorship legislation, because one thing that's come up more is book rating databases, vendors who have book rating databases. And again, unsurprisingly, in several states, we've seen that the people, and particularly entities who have been behind writing legislation, pushing legislation, lobbying for legislation, personally have financial interests in the databases and platforms that would be used. This, though, when it's pointed out in cases, has been a pretty straightforward way to push back against the bill. When we kind of this pointing out that it's a grift, that this is corrupt lawmaking, that tends to play well with all sides of the political spectrum. No one wants that. At least it's very hard to say publicly that you want that. So that's been something we've seen successful in terms of a tactic, pointing out the costs associated with implementation. And now that we've had several years of these anti-library attacks, we do now have more and more data on what the actual cost of it is. What's the cost to taxpayers? What's the cost to individual districts? Especially when you come to unfunded mandates. And so that has been another talking point that can play well with all ends of the political spectrum. Again, it's hard to argue against wasting money. And getting non-librarian groups to advocate. So the more we've seen groups that are not librarians joining in with us, standing with us, sometimes helping state associations to meetings where they themselves or allies can get into conversations and meetings with legislators that maybe the state association can't. That's also, we've seen that continue to be successful. And the more folks have built up those relationships, the more they've been able to push back. So a few things of what is ALA doing? We're continuing to track and analyze legislation, now with more volunteer help from ALA members. This year, something differently is because there is just so much legislation. Some of ALA members, through the Government Documents Roundtable, have offered to help us go through our alerts and start tagging and analyzing some of the bills, which has been very helpful. We started our Faith for Libraries campaign with the Interfaith Alliance that's focusing on connecting faith communities who want to support libraries, whether that's showing up to give testimony, writing op-eds, working directly with libraries to support them and friends, and connecting them with library leaders, and then continuing to train libraries and community members in effective advocacy at the state level. Few new things. We also funded a national focus group study on effective proactive messaging about libraries, library staff, and the freedom to read. So that information will be coming out soon. We're often working with coalitions of other organizations to connect chapters to other local entities. And we're continuing to support chapters with strategic counsel, connecting to experts, communications help, letters, testimonials. As always, our state and local protocol for state local legislation is that we do advocacy on the invitation and with the green light of the state association. So if the state association wants us to publicly support, for example, a freedom to read legislation, we are happy to do that. If they prefer that we work behind the scenes, we also are happy to do that as well. And then finally, because you probably hear from what organizations might be asking, what can we do? What can an organization do in general right now, given these legislative trends? I'm always going to say proactive relationship building, especially with non-library organizations. Something that's been helpful when it comes to the anti-association bills is working with other professional associations who may not care that much about libraries, but they do care about professional associations being singled out and attacked. Because that could affect them too. Publishing proactive positive stories, articles that demonstrate alliances. This is something that's a bit of flood the market, training librarians, effective advocacy. And if you know folks who just also really want to feel that they are doing something concrete and raise their hands, referring them to us so we can use more legislative tracking volunteers for ALA. Again, it helps us catch things as quickly as we can and make sure that we're categorizing and be able to find those trends. All right, that's it from me. I just threw a bunch of information at you. I'm here for questions. Take it away.
I've got a question.
Mm-hmm.
Could you go into a little bit more detail on the types of associations that have been attacked?
Sure.
On funding.
Yeah, so in terms of library associations, we saw the Iowa Library Association was being attacked. And then right now in Arizona, it's the Arizona school librarians who are being attacked. And then beforehand, prior, that's, what was most recently kind of end of last year and currently this year in Arizona. Beforehand, then kind of the 2023-2024, it was Texas and Louisiana was where we saw specifically anti-ALA sentiment. We are still seeing some anti-ALA things. It's like in terms of us specifically, but it's been less of you can't join ALA and more of you can't use any materials from ALA. Can't, whether it's professional development, any of our content, anything branded by us, anything used by us, that restricting that, which also can become, in this case, long-term, it's a First Amendment issue there. Other questions?
This is Monica. I just want to acknowledge for all of you that Amelia was part of the training that we received as part of the briefing days at National Library Legislative Day. She did a really good job of helping us to understand how to tell the story of libraries and pieces that are there. And so I especially want to thank you for, after that busy few days in DC.
Thank you. Thank you.
Work
I got
here.
in pretty late last night. I had some delayed travel, so I'm really excited to be here. But I was working to make sure because I wanted to make sure I was on the ball, despite coming in late from DC. So I'm excited for that and be here. And it was wonderful to see you there, Monica. And yes, she said one of the things I do at a position is in doing a lot of advocacy communications training. They said one of the factors that we've seen be successful in the state level is that really proactive flooding the market communication and being able to take it out of this abstract anti-library, these vague accusations, this really broad language, and make it really concrete. Here is how what we do impacts communities and specific members of a community every day. And it really can defang a lot of those. And I've seen it on the state level do that. Both local and then also just in arguments, in discussions with legislators, I'll say. Any other questions?
Thank you so much, Amelia, for your presentation, and we really appreciate your work and being here with us today, even after your long trip.
Absolutely, absolutely. I was, so excited to be here. I'm always excited to present with Rails, and thank you so much for your work and everything that you do. Feel free always to reach out to me, advocacy@ala.org. We'll get someone in our office. If you wish to reach out to me, I'll send it to you, but it is A. Aldred, so all the A's at ala.org. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Now, board members can share news from their library or area. Who has some news?
I have something I would love to share, and I'm happy for the state we've got, but I'll let you know if it goes further than that. My school library, Vernon Hills High School, is one of 2 finalists for the National School Library of the Year award given by the American Association of School Librarians. Yay. So we have a virtual visit with the award committee at sort of the middle of March, where they'll meet our students and our teachers and our administration. And then I guess if we're still in the running after that, then one of the award committee comes in person to see our school. It's been a long process, but I'm really glad to stand up and lift up our school library, and very pleased to see that our hard work has been noticed. So,
Delete.
thank you. Yep.
Other news?
I would be happy to share that Laconia in the supervisors and administrators section is holding a series of 3 book clubs. The virtual one is full, so don't sign up for that one, but there is an in-person date both at the Indian Trails Public Library in Wheeling and at the Frankfurt Public Library. And Frankfurt, ironically. It's a discussion. They're pre-reading the book called The Trifecta of Trust. So hopefully if you are Lakota members, please send your peeps over and talk with other managers on this professional book club. I'm doing another presentation in April, but I can't remember the date, but that's for Atlas and that's about career growth. It's a whole panel for career growers. So.
Any other news? All right, is there any further discussion? Well, thank you all for that. The next board meeting will be held on Friday, March 27, 2026 at 1 p.m. The agenda for the March meeting will include eRead Illinois and Inky.org as the service of the month. And the board development topic will be an overview of rural libraries. Thank you all for your attendance today. I hope you have a nice weekend, and I will adjourn this meeting at 2:29 p.m.